Hey music lovers, how's it going? I wanted to take the time in this video to talk about 5 solid state amps that would sound pretty good. You could use them live, you could use them with a drummer, and you would have a very pleasant playing experience. Why would you choose a solid state amp over a tube amp? Why would I choose one? The main reasons are for practicality. I wouldn't, I could sit here and talk about the tone, and there are opinions I have as far as the tone one versus the other, but the real reason is a practical reason. It's because I feel like for the headroom you can get for the price of a solid state amp, you can get that clean, loud headroom is just cheaper. Number one. Number two, solid state amps tend to be lighter. Tube amps tend to be heavier if you want the similar sound. The package it comes in tends to be heavier, just the mechanics of how tube amps are built. And so those were really the two main things, was the cost of the solid state. And when I say cost, the initial cost tends to be cheaper, and also the cost of maintaining a solid state amp. All the solid state amps I've never had to do any real maintenance. Maybe knobs fall off or something, but never had to do any mechanical maintenance on a solid state amp. They've just plugged in and run for the entirety of their time, and never had any problems. Tube amps just tend to be more temperamental. I also felt tube amps are more temperamental to fluxes in the power. Different clubs have good power, and the quality of power you get from the outlets of different clubs is not the same. And I felt like tubes were really sensitive to that. But again, get in the comments section and tell me if you've had experience to that. That could be just something that I was feeling, but I don't know for sure. I haven't done any scientific research on that, but I felt that tubes were sensitive to the power, the differences in power. Because as you start playing clubs, you realize power sources aren't all great. Some clubs are really dirty and throw that 60 cycle hum right through your equipment. So those were the factors. And when you're going on the road, having something that's low maintenance is always going to be a premium. You're going to pay for that. So it's a practical decision, not a tone decision, is what I'm saying. I can tend to get solid state packages and lighter amps, smaller packages. The amp heads tend to be smaller. Now you can, with a tube amp, you can go an amp head combo in order to decrease the size of your footprint, but they're still going to be heavier because you're dealing with tubes. So that's just something that I factor in. And then you're going to still be dealing with the fragility in that it's a tube amp head and it's smaller, but it's still going to have those fragility problems of it's going to be higher maintenance. So those are things that I factor in. With that being said, here are 5 solid state amps that I would pick. Now, one more thing, one note is I do like the tone of tube amps on single coils a little bit more. Humbuckers, I don't really care so much, so it doesn't really matter to me. With humbuckers, I tend to be happy on either. But with single coils, I'm a little bit happier on a tube amp, but I'm not willing to make the trade-offs of the size and the fragility. If I'm playing at home, it doesn't matter so much, but we're talking about gear that we want to take out. So let's talk about 5 pieces of equipment that would be solid. Now, we got Quilter amps. That's my number one, is Quilter amps. I love them. I think the versatility, right? So the amount of different combinations. You have little amp heads that are very light. You can combine them with whatever cabinet you want. Minding the ohmage rating is matches, the ohms match. But then Quilter will also make their own cool little cabs that fit sleekly together, so they can kind of have a little pocket to go into. So I really think that they're great. I own a tone block, and I was considering getting a super block because the line outs, the options they give you, the versatility they give you is amazing. And as long as you can line out of these amps, you got a good amp, because you can go out to the PA. And if at the club, they're going to mic you anyway. So, okay, so next one is the Roland JC Series. Now, the JC 120 is like my favorite all-time amp in a lot of ways, but again, it has the same problems as a Fender Reverb, which I also love. They're just too heavy. They're great amps. Fender Reverb's a fantastic tube amp, but it's just too heavy for my taste. I don't like lugging that around. And when you're just starting out, you don't know what your load-ins are going to be like. I've had shows where you're carrying your gear up flights of stairs, and it's like those were things that make me now factor in to my decisions, those experiences like that. So Roland Jazz 120, even though I love it, I would downsize and get maybe the JC 22 or the JC 40, but I think they're fantastic amps. Even the little ones, they're gonna have a lot of headroom. Next one I would consider, this is an Amp Head, so you're looking at the Orange Crush Pro. Hey music lovers, how's it going? I wanted to take the time in this video to talk about 5 solid state amps that would sound pretty. Newer one to the list, it's the Boss Katana. They have a 100-watt head and they have a combo. Me being me, I would go for the head because I like lining out, and then you get your own choice of amp cap. So that's another one. Then the next one on this list, number 5, is one that I actually own and I'm a real big fan of. It is the ZT Amplifiers. This is a Lunchbox Amplifier, 200 watts in like a 6.5-inch speaker. It's amazing because it has a speaker out. Again, I value that very much in an amp. This is a combo amp, so you know, usually I like the head but you know, you got to have one combo amp at least, right? So this one, very loud. And I can line out to another cabinet to get even louder. So it's a great practice amp, and you can cut against the drums. So that's another one I would consider. I think they've just come out with a new one with a reverb on it. So you know, every time I think about getting rid of the amp, I love it. I practice on it. It's my clean amp. It doesn't have any frills on it, so there's no reverb. So what you sound like is what you sound like, and I tend to like playing like that, practicing anyway. So I love that amp. Can't say enough about the ZT amplifier. And then the next one that I said 5, but I'm going to give you another one, is the DV Mark 60 Raw Dawg. This is the Eric Gales model. I watched an interview with him, and I loved everything he said about it. I loved the way he talked about the tone. It made me think this is going to be a great piece of equipment, which it is that he said, I like my equipment to be loud and clean, and then I add the pedals afterwards. If it can be loud and clean, I can do anything with it. That's my philosophy on sound. If you can get loud and clean, there's so many different pedals that you can combine and find the right pedal with your amp that'll make it sound beautiful and give you those overdriven tones that sound, those saturated tones that sound really awesome. So, you know, if you're not getting a tube amp, then you're still going to be able to find an amp that's really nice, cut through the band. And again, if you match it up with the pedals that you know you can work with, then you can get a really nice sound. So again, get in the comment section and tell me, are there any solid state amps that you think are worth looking into? You know, again, this is not anything against tubes. This is more if there are a shortage of tubes right now and people are worried about that. I'm trying to say, I never really messed with tube amps like that anyway, and there's some great options out there. So please, people who have experience with that, please let me know what kind of amps you've been looking at or stuff you've played with over the years that's not tube. That's a good option for players. I appreciate y'all listening. Talk soon.